talk about miners for a second. ETH miners are making bank right now. It's insane. They made a total of 830 million in January, dude. And 40% of that was fee revenue, right? So again, miners make revenue on any blockchain, including Ethereum or Bitcoin, in two ways. One is issuance. So they get a reward based in Ether every time they mine a block successfully. So that's issuance reward. And they also make fees on the gas that you pay or the transaction costs that you pay on the Bitcoin network. These two fee structures combine to form the total miner revenue. And what's amazing here is now transaction fees compose 40% of total miner revenue on Ethereum. So what do you make of these high numbers and that proportion of fees being transaction fee revenue?
Yeah, this is just a very strong signal as to what the longevity of Ethereum could be, right? The way that you understand a blockchain to be able to live long into the future is demand for block space. And Ryan, if you click on that image, it'll blow it up a little bit bigger. Look at that bar on the right. That red part on top of the blue part, that's the fee revenue. And the blue part is the issuance, right?
Wow.
They're almost equal. They're almost equal in fee revenue to issuance. And what that tells us is that if you take that fee revenue side of that bar chart, it's larger than all of the revenue that miners made in like the bear market for almost an entire year. Like the fees that miners made in the last couple months matched the entire issuance and fees that they got in like 2018 and 2019. And this is really important. This is super, super important. And the reason why is because if your blockchain can collect fees, if the validators can collect fees, you don't have to issue as much currency to fund security. That means that your asset will be having less issuance, which means your asset will be more scarce, will be more hard. The more fees that are collected, the less you have to issue. And so the whole narrative around like this Bitcoin hard cap is still thrown into question because we do not see this same miner revenue from fees in the Bitcoin network. The whole narrative around Bitcoin is that at some point issuance will be replaced by fees. Yet we are already seeing this in the Ethereum blockchain. We are seeing a 40 out of the 100% of total revenue, 40% of that is fees paid to miners in Ether. I don't know what the Bitcoin fee percentage is. I think the last time I checked, it was like 10 to 15%. But Ether and Ethereum is already outcompeting Bitcoin in long-term sustainability. Ether's ultrasound money. It's so ultrasound money. That's what it is.
I want to talk two things about this too, David, just to add on to what you're saying. It is the case that if all of the Bitcoin were issued, as is the plan, right? And let's say all of the Ether were issued, that Ethereum would be a higher security network than Bitcoin today if they were both based on just transaction fee revenue, which means Ethereum's blocks are more valuable than Bitcoin's blocks, which is interesting because Bitcoin is the one switching to 100% transaction fee revenue, which is not its strength. Its strength is a meme store of value. Its strength is not the value of its block space and its network. So it's kind of switching from its strength to its weakness in its issuance policy. And again, issuance policy is also security policy. So these are trade-offs that people often confuse. The other thing I wanted to say is all of this red section that you're pointing at on the graph, guess what happens to this red section, guys? EIP 1559 means it starts to go to holders. This red section, a large proportion of it starts to get burnt when EIP 1559 is active, which means it actually decreases the Ether supply. So I don't know how much we're looking at here, David, but like 829 million, right, in January, 39% of those were fees. Let's say it's like 300 million or so, something to that effect. A large proportion of that would be burnt under EIP 1559, say 200 million, 250 million of fee burns. That's a de-inflationary pressure on Ether and the scarcity of ETH. So this chart is, while gas fees suck, right? Like it is long-term very bullish for the health and security and the product market fit of the Ethereum blockchain.
For all the visual learners out there, and for those on the podcast, you should check out the YouTube because there are plenty of things to look at. Take that red section and then take that an equal amount of the size of that red section and like delete it from the blue section, right? And so like all of that red fees that you're seeing, you can actually remove the issuance, right? And so if you remove the red part from the blue part, that is actually the issuance of Ether. And if the red part continues to go up and up and up, the blue part will continue to go down and down and down under an EIP 1559 paradigm.
And just like that, this whole roll-up turned into an EIP 1559 episode. We could go on for 10 or 15 more minutes about this, David, but we've got to move on.
It's so cool.
It's awesome.
The revolutionary part about this whole entire industry right now.
Yeah, and it's so underrated. Like, most people don't understand this. This is not the popular Main Street narrative. This is the stuff that like you're hearing from Bankless because, you know, people in the Bankless community are actually looking at this stuff. Anyway, we've got to move on. David, let's talk about support EIP1559.org. This is how governance works in Ethereum and in crypto. Can you talk about this and why this is important and then kind of relate it to governance?
Yeah, this Support EIP 1559 campaign is a response to a bunch of miners that are collecting themselves together to do the opposite, where they're trying to nix EIP 1559 because obviously it's straight up bad for miners. Like there's less miner revenue if EIP 1559 goes in. All those fees that we were talking about earlier that we under an EIP 1559 paradigm that gets burned instead of going to the miners. So miners don't like that. If you want to listen to a really, really good rant, listen to Anthony Susano and Eric Connor on their Into the Ether podcast that they did where they talked about this. Like the minority of miners, by the way. Then what's interesting about this is the support side of EIP 1559 is also led by miners, but the anti-EIP 1559 also a different set of miners, different pools of miners. Like, honestly, fuck those guys because they are making the most amount of money that they have ever made ever. And they are just trying to say like, no, EIP 1559 is going to like destabilize Ethereum. We're not going to make any money. Even with EIP 1559, miners are making the most money that they've ever made ever. Like, cry me a river. Like, this is why proof of stake is so important because miners are not aligned with Ethereum as much as Ether holders are.
So this website is a website. It's basically an advocacy type website where you can, you know, tweet your support. You click a button, you tweet your support, and just go on record as saying you support EIP 1559. And basically, the entire community does support EIP 1559, with a few very small exceptions, except for miners. But let's talk about this because I think this is interesting. What I guess weapon, what tool what leverage do miners have over the rest of the community? So let's say I'm a miner, I don't want to lose my revenue here, and I start saber rattling. What's my threat to the Ethereum community? What am I going to do if you guys go forward with EIP 1559?
Yeah, the minority of miners would be able to fork off their chain. And I guess they wouldn't fork where like when EIP 1559 comes in, that's going to be a fork. And so the miners that don't want that are just going to continue on in their own chain. But like, good luck convincing the rest of us to go with you, right? This is the power of community consensus. If there's two forks, the community will choose the one that they want to go with. And from what we can tell, EIP 1559 with overwhelming support, everyone's going to choose the fork with that support. So, you know, go fork Ethereum and like go play in your like non EIP 1559 playground. Have fun with your like $1 ETH fork.
The apps aren't coming there. The community's not coming there. The users aren't coming there. I guess the upside is we might get an extra token out of this that we can go sell.
Yeah,
right? So this is like an Ethereum classic type of situation. So they really don't have the leverage here. Yeah, they really don't have the leverage here, which is super interesting. But if you're an ETH holder, it's kind of all upside, right? Because you basically get, you know, both forks in this types of situation. But this is also an example of how governance works, right? This is kind of the counter forces at play, and ultimately community consensus is the engine here, is the governance layer, that layer zero, everyone together deciding which fork they're going to download and support is the community. And that's what Ethereum is. It works the same in Bitcoin. And it's a brilliant, I think, mechanism for governance that's as credibly neutral as it can be.
Well, I'll actually be push back on that and be the devil's advocate here. So for anyone that wants to call me an ETH maximalist, here's my critique of this. I don't want in the long term any sort of like, I support this fork versus I support this fork, because the whole point of Ethereum in the long term is no governance, right? We were talking earlier about Rye and how it's like a money god because it's autonomous and free from human intervention. This is support EIP1559. That's the same like messages I see when I see like the billboards or the road signs about like in Seattle where I live, where like there's political movements about like, let's, add in taxes onto soda or gas. That's not what we want for Ethereum to be. So like the fact that this is even here is a little bit concerning. I don't want Ethereum to be a politically engaging thing. It's supposed to be autonomous. There isn't supposed to be any sort of like political rallying to try and change the direction of Ethereum. The direction of Ethereum should be the direction of Ethereum, which is autonomous and takes its own course. Again, we are in this early research and development phase of Ethereum, so that's why I'm okay with it. But over the long term, I don't want any sort of this activity at all.
Yeah, and I think I would agree with you, right? So the only answer to can we completely neutralize all political decisions, basically, is to solidify your base protocol and don't make any further changes. And at some point that will happen to Ethereum. I think actually some point soon in the next like 3 to 5 years, we'll get all of the core changes we need into Ethereum in the same way that Bitcoin is kind of like codified. It's solid. There are no further changes, although there's probably one coming down the pike once issuance gets to 0 and security drops, maybe.
Ooh, spicy.
Oops, a little spicy there. But yeah, I agree with you. Ultimately, this has to happen with Ethereum. But in the meanwhile, we have this nice kind of fork choice rule that lets the community and social consensus ultimately decide anyway.
Hey,
David.
we hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, head over to Bankless HQ right now to develop your crypto investing skills and learn how to free yourself from banks and gain your financial independence. We recommend joining our daily newsletter, podcast, and community as a Bankless Premium subscriber to get the most out of your Bankless experience. You'll get access to our market analysis, our alpha leaks, and exclusive content, and even the Bankless token for airdrops, raffles, and unlocks. If you're interested in crypto, the Bankless community is where you want to be. Click the link in the description to become a Bankless Premium subscriber today. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for in-depth interviews with industry leaders, Ask Me Anythings, and weekly roll-ups where we summarize the week in crypto and other fantastic content. Thanks everyone for watching and being on the journey as we build out the Bankless Nation.